My name is Jack, and for the past 3 years my life has been a true fairy tale. I married the love of my life, the beautiful Lisa, and we built a cozy home in a quiet suburb of Chicago. Our life was filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities that stretched out before us. However, everything changed on one fateful morning when there was a knock at the door. Lisa opened it and froze in astonishment. On the doorstep stood a woman I had never seen before, but from the look on Lisa's face, I knew it was someone important. "Mom?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling with shock and disbelief. The woman nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I stood aside, stunned by this unexpected reunion. In all our years of marriage, Lisa had never once mentioned her mother. Awkward introductions and a tense conversation over coffee followed. It turned out that Lisa's mother, Carol, had just been released from prison, where she had been serving time for theft. Lisa looked embarrassed and lost, clearly not ready for this sudden reunion. When Carol went to the guest room to unpack, Lisa turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Jack, I'm so sorry I never told you about my mom," she said, her voice shaking. "I just didn't know how to bring it up. I'm so ashamed of her past, and I was afraid you would judge me." I pulled Lisa into a hug, soothing her trembling shoulders. "Hey, it's okay," I whispered. "We all make mistakes. What your mom did doesn't define who you are. I love you no matter what." Lisa smiled gratefully through her tears, but I could see she was still tense. The presence of her mother in our home threatened to disrupt the tranquil balance we had worked so hard to build. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house was strained. Carol tried to make up for lost time with her daughter, but Lisa kept her distance, still reeling from the shock and struggling with her conflicting emotions. I did my best to be supportive of my wife, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were about to be turned upside down. One evening, after Carol had gone to bed, Lisa and I sat on the couch in the living room, sipping wine and trying to make sense of the events of the past few days. "I just don't know how to handle this," Lisa confessed, staring into her glass. "I've kept my past a secret for so long, and now it's crashing into our lives without warning." I squeezed her hand, trying to lend her my strength. "We'll get through this together," I assured her. "Your mom is a part of your life, and now she's a part of our family. We'll find a way to make it work." But even as I spoke those words, I couldn't shake the unsettling premonition. Carol's arrival was just the beginning, and I feared that the trials ahead for our family might prove too heavy to bear. As the days turned into weeks, Carol's presence in our home became increasingly palpable. At first, Lisa kept her distance, still grappling with her conflicting emotions about her mother's sudden appearance. But gradually the ice began to thaw, and I noticed glimmers of the old closeness between mother and daughter. Carol went out of her way to make amends for her past and catch up on lost time. She insisted on helping around the house, cooking dinners and tending to the garden. Her culinary skills were impressive, and soon our home was filled with the aromas of her signature dishes. Despite the initial shock, I found myself looking at Carol in a new light. She was a caring and kind woman who clearly regretted her past mistakes deeply. My heart went out to her, understanding how complicated and unfair life could be. One day, when Lisa was working late, Carol and I found ourselves alone, sipping tea in the backyard. She told me about her troubled childhood, how she ended up on the streets and made mistakes that ultimately led her to prison. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke of her regrets and fear that her daughter would never forgive her. I felt a surge of empathy and reached out to squeeze her hand. "Carol, the past is the past," I said gently. "What matters is who you are now. Lisa loves you, and in time, she'll see how much you've changed." Carol smiled gratefully, and at that moment, a bond formed between us. We talked late into the night, sharing stories and laughter. I felt a strange pull toward this woman, a kindred spirit I had never encountered before. When Lisa finally came home, she was pleasantly surprised to find us engaged in friendly conversation. She hugged her mother, and I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. Jay hoped that they could mend their relationship and leave the past behind. In the following weeks, I found myself spending more and more time with Carol, helping her settle into our small town. We went shopping, walked in the park, and even cooked dinner together. Lisa was grateful for my support and understanding, often expressing her appreciation with tender kisses and embraces. But as Carol and I grew closer, I began to notice troubling changes in my feelings. Our casual touches lingered longer. Our glances became more meaningful. I caught myself thinking about her in moments when I should have been focused on my wife. Guilt gnawed at me, but I couldn't deny the growing attraction I felt toward Carol. I convinced myself it was just an innocent friendship, that I was simply trying to support her through a difficult time. But deep down, I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, VDJ, a path that could lead to the destruction of everything I held dear. I struggled against my forbidden feelings, praying for the strength to resist temptation. But with each day spent in Carol's company, my resolve and self-control weakened. I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, risking everything for a fleeting infatuation. And I feared that the inevitable fall would shatter not only my marriage, but my very soul. The more time I spent with Carol, the more the tension between us grew. Our conversations became more personal, our touches more frequent and daring. We were dancing a dangerous dance on the edge of what was allowed, each afraid to take the first step, but secretly longing for it. One day, when Lisa was away for the weekend visiting a friend, Carol and I found ourselves alone in the house. The air was electric with tension, every glance and gesture seemingly loaded with hidden meaning. We sat on the couch, sipping wine and sharing memories from our pasts. At one point, Carol set down her glass and turned to me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Jack, I can't hide this anymore," she whispered. I think I'm falling in love with you." My heart stopped in my chest. There they were, the words I had both feared and desperately longed to hear. I knew I should have pulled away, should have nipped this madness in the bud. But instead, I found myself reaching for her, my lips finding hers in a passionate kiss. That kiss was like a leap off a cliff, exhilarating, overwhelming, and incredibly dangerous. When we broke apart, breathing heavily, reality came crashing down on us in a cold wave. We had crossed a line, and there was no going back. In the days that followed, Carol and I tried to keep our distance, knowing our feelings were wrong and destructive. But the attraction between us was too strong to resist. We found excuses to be alone, secretly meeting to steal moments of passion. I was torn apart by guilt and shame. I loved Lisa with all my heart, but I couldn't deny the deep connection I felt with Carol. It was more than just physical attraction, VJ. It was as if our souls were in tune on some fundamental level. At the same time, I saw how my betrayal was affecting Lisa. She became more distant and withdrawn, as if she sensed on some intuitive level that something was amiss. Our conversations became strained and awkward, every word sounding false on my tongue. Carol, too, was racked with guilt, knowing we were hurting someone we both loved. But even with our guilt, we couldn't bring ourselves to end the affair. We were like addicts, desperately craving the next fix, even if it threatened to destroy our lives. One day, lost in a moment of passion, Carol and I forgot to lock the bedroom door. Suddenly, there was a gasp of shock, and we broke apart to see Lisa standing in the doorway, her face contorted with shock and pain. "What the hell?" she choked out, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "Jack, how could you? And with my own mother!" I leaped off the bed, frantically trying to cover myself. "Lisa, baby, I can explain," I began, but my words sounded pathetic even to my own ears. Lisa shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Don't bother. I don't want to hear it. You've both betrayed me. I can't even look at you right now." She turned and ran out of the room, her sobs echoing through the house. Carol and I just stood there, stunned and ashamed, realizing our actions had just shattered our family. I knew I should have gone after Lisa, begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. But the cold, heavy weight of guilt and shame rooted my feet to the spot. I cast a helpless glance at Carol, who was quietly weeping, her face buried in her hands. The reality of our betrayal crashed down on us, and we realized there was no easy way out of this situation. We had destroyed Lisa's trust, broken her heart in the cruelest way possible, and now we had to face the consequences of our selfish actions. The next few days passed in a blur. Lisa refused to speak to either me or Carol, locking herself in our bedroom and only emerging to grab food or water. I slept on the couch, consumed by guilt and despair, not knowing how to repair the damage I had done. Carol was crushed, her guilt and shame almost physically palpable. She cried for hours, repeating how sorry she was and how she never meant to hurt her daughter. We barely spoke to each other, too lost in our own thoughts and regrets. Finally, on the fourth day, Lisa emerged from the bedroom, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She sat across from us at the kitchen table, her face grim and resolute. "I want to know why," she said quietly. "How could you do this to me? How long has this been going on?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to find the words. "Lisa, baby, I'm so sorry," I began, my voice shaking. "It just happened. We didn't plan it. I swear, it was a mistake, a terrible mistake." Carol nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Lisa, please believe us. We never meant to hurt you. I don't know what came over us. It's no excuse, I know. We should have been stronger." Lisa stared at us for a long moment, her eyes filled with hurt and anger. "How can I ever trust you again?" she asked, her voice breaking. "My husband and my mother, the two people I love most in the world. How could you betray me like this?" I reached for her across the table, desperately wanting to comfort her, but she jerked her hand away. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You lost that right when you slept with my mother." Her words were like a slap in the face, but I knew I deserved them. I had betrayed our marriage vows, our trust, our love, and now I had to face the consequences of my actions. Carol tried to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. "Lisa, baby, I know we've hurt you, unimaginably, and I'm so sorry. If I could just go back and change things." But Lisa shook her head, her eyes cold and hard. "But you can't. What's done is done. You've both betrayed my trust. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this." With those words, she stood up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving us sitting in deafening silence. Carol and I exchanged helpless glances, realizing our actions might have cost us the most important person in our lives. In the weeks that followed, our home became a battleground. Lisa alternated between shouting, crying, and icy silence, her anger and pain almost tangible. She insisted that Carol move out, unable to bear being around her mother after her betrayal. Our marriage was crumbling, every conversation turning into an argument. Lisa threatened to leave, to take the kids and never come back. I begged her to forgive me, swore it would never happen again, but my words sounded hollow even to my own ears. Carol tried to talk to Lisa, to explain, but Lisa refused to see her. Years of hurt and resentment seemed to pour out, and my wife struggled to cope with the emotional upheaval. I felt utterly lost, torn apart by guilt and remorse. I knew I had to find a way to atone, to prove to Lisa that my love for her was real and unshakable, but I had no idea how to heal the wounds my betrayal had inflicted. Our family was teetering on the brink, and I feared that one wrong step could send us crashing down. I had to find a way to earn Lisa's forgiveness and make amends, or risk losing everything I loved, forever. Months passed, and our family was still trying to recover from the fallout of my betrayal. Lisa oscillated between anger, pain, and bitter acceptance. Her trust in me shattered. She agreed to go to counseling with a family therapist, but progress was slow and painful. I tried my best to make amends, to be a better husband and father than ever before. I took on most of the housework, cooked romantic dinners, and planned special dates to win back Lisa's heart. But I knew it wasn't enough DJ. I had to prove to her that my heart belonged to her alone. Carol moved to another city, understanding that her presence only aggravated the situation. She wrote Lisa a long letter, expressing her regrets and begging for forgiveness for the pain she had caused. Lisa read the letter with tears in her eyes, but wasn't ready to forgive her mother. Too much had been said and done, the wounds too deep. One evening, after a particularly emotional session with the therapist, Lisa and I sat on our bed, exhausted and drained. She turned to me, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I want to forgive you, Jack," she whispered, "but I don't know how. Every time I look at you, I remember what you did. How could you choose her over me?" I felt my heart break and pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "Lisa, my love, it wasn't a choice," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't mean I love you any less. You are the love of my life, the mother of my children. Nothing and no one can ever change that." Lisa sobbed into my chest, clinging to me. "I want to believe you," she whispered, "but it hurts so much. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." I held her tighter, my heart filled with determination. I will work every day to earn your trust, I promised. I'll do whatever it takes to prove my love for you. We'll get through this together. And we did. It was a long and difficult journey, filled with tears, arguments, and moments of doubt. But we held on to each other, working to rebuild our marriage one brick at a time. I cut off all contact with Carol, knowing I had to devote myself entirely to my wife and family. I became more open and honest with Lisa, sharing my thoughts and feelings even when it was hard. Slowly but surely, we began to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of love, respect, and absolute devotion. Years passed, and though the pain of my betrayal never faded completely, Lisa and I learned to live with it. We emerged stronger as a couple, our love deeper and more mature. We both understood that even in the darkest moments, it was important to hold on to each other and never lose hope. Looking at our family now VDJ at our children, grown up in a loving home, at the beautiful life we've built together, DJ. I know that all the trials were worth it. I learned from my mistakes and became a better man. And though I will always regret the pain I caused, I am grateful for the second chance Lisa gave me. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.